Hello and welcome to the HBR exclusive interview. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Duncan Stewart, the Director of Research, Technology, Media and Telecommunications at Deloitte, Canada. With a substantial experience in TMT sector, Duncan is the leading expert on the latest trends and developments that will shape the technology, media and telecommunications in the year to come. Without further ado, I would like to kick off with Duncan. Duncan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Good to be here.
Duncan, Deloitte has been publishing this trends report for nearly 20 years, as much as I know. And this year we have 15 trends ranging from satellites to merger and acquisition. So just before starting, are there any common patterns behind these trends?
For the last almost 10 years now, we've talked about technology. We've talked about innovation and new technologies. The driver has largely been innovation. Interestingly, we had warning while writing this year's predictions, sort of in the August, September, October timeframe. We already saw what was going on with the economy, with rising interest rates, inflation, consumer prices, energy prices.
Not a perfect year.
Not a perfect year. But we knew that, and that actually strongly influenced our writing of predictions for this year. Our theme is doing more with less. We come up with technologies that allow network operators, that allow consumers, that allow brands to achieve their goals faster, cheaper, better in the context of probably slower growth, higher prices, and a complex macroeconomic, and we can't forget the war in Ukraine, geopolitical environment.
So it's not an easy environment for the companies to thrive, but they should be also keeping the growth and innovation on the ground within this context.
As an example, many people are asking, why are we spending $100 billion on building new chip plants in Europe and North America? Isn't there currently a chip surplus right now? There is, but we're spending that money not for 2023, but for 2025 to 2030. In the technology business, frequently, you need to invest now and harvest later.
Right. And also, when we look at the trends that start with the telecom industry has been showing a significant growth for the last decade, and also very much affected with the global conditions as well. And we have been seeing a lot of things about affordability, connectivity, and access, and there are potential risks and threats at the same time. So how do you see the progress of the telecom industry, and what will be some of the trends that will shape the industry?
So the one that I always get, so I talk to carriers around the world, and there are two things that they ask me over and over again. Not what is 5G, but how fast should I roll out 5G? And this is the big one, how do I make money? Here I am spending billions of dollars on 5G spectrum. Here I am spending billions of dollars on 5G software and hardware. How do I get them? What's the ROI? What are the use cases? How do I make money off of it? As part of our predictions this year, we have two that really kind of focus on that. One of them is a new generation of affordable phones. I happen to know that 5G has not rolled out here in Turkey yet, but equally, it hasn't in the Philippines. I'm traveling to the Philippines next month, which is why I know this. And the CEO of one of the Philippine companies was asked, why haven't you built 5G networks yet? And his answer was, we're the Philippines. We can't afford $1,000 phones. We're predicting that there will be a new generation of $100 5G smartphones, affordable. Now, why does this matter in Turkey and the Philippines? Well, affordability. Why else does it matter? These new 5G phones can be used for fixed wireless access. Now, this is something that when I'm in North America, historically people haven't understood. But here in Turkey, you have millions of people using cellular networks to provide in-home broadband. Same in much of Asia. The third one, though, is that as the price of these 5G modules inside the phone goes from $50 or $100 to $5 or even $10, it's much more affordable to put those in the factory of the future. So when we talk about IoT, Internet of Things, cheaper, more affordable 5G modules are a big part of it.
Right. So it is much more affordability, connectivity, and access when we talk about the telecommunication industry. And the other thing is that for the last year or year and a half, we have been seeing a lot about the chip crisis. It is affecting everything from auto business to telecom business to consumer electronics. So what about the semiconductor industry? What are some trends that will shape this industry?
So as part of our predictions, we actually have 3 about the chip industry. And I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, I happen to be the author of our 2023 Global Semiconductor Outlook. We launched it last week. It's a huge report, 16, 17 pages, talking about the major trends. What do we see from a supply perspective? For chips that go into data centers, computers, smartphones, the shortage is over. Those chips, gaming consoles, those chips are widely available. Again, as a matter of fact, they're in surplus and we're taking inventories down. However, when it comes to the durable goods, the automobiles, we are still in shortage. We will stay in shortage probably until the summer of 2023. We are looking at the back half of the year for those inventories to work down and for the industry to enter into supply-demand balance and resume growth in 2024. One thing I should absolutely flag is that the industry is taking this opportunity, this slowdown that we are currently seeing. WSTS, the major forecaster of chip supply, is actually calling where once they had looked for the industry to grow in 2023 by 10 or 20%, they're now looking for it to shrink 5 to 10%. I'm calling this the pause that refreshes. This is a chance for the industry to work on sustainability, to work on digitizing and transform themselves, and also to build new manufacturing capacity, not just in East Asia, but instead to diversify it in Europe, in North America. Who knows? Maybe one day in Turkey.
Yeah. We are 100% sure that the demand is going to increase for semiconductors, especially the second category of chips that you have mentioned, not the ones we use in our computers, but the ones we will use in the electrical cars and other things. So do you think that the production capacity increase will cope with the increase in demand?
So this gets technical. Here we go. Most chips are made out of pure silicon. Silicon is what's called a narrow band gap semiconductor, which means it's really good at turning on and off rapidly with very low power, which is why our phones work so well. However, inside an electric vehicle, things don't run at 1.5 volts. They run at 600, 800 volts going forward. These are battery electric vehicles. You need new kinds of chips, technologies made such as silicon carbide or gallium nitride. I know you have a background in this kind of engineering. These wide band gap chips are made using different materials at different fabs, using different technologies. And the good news is we are building a lot of capacity around the world. I know there's an election coming up. If I accidentally got elected president of Turkey in May or June, it's not going to happen. If I was trying to build a semiconductor industry in Turkey, I would actually look at these niche semiconductors, the gallium nitride, silicon carbide. Those are much more affordable. I don't think Turkey can build a $20 or $25 billion leading edge fab, but having a role either in compound semiconductors or in assembly and test, something might be well suited for the Turkish economy.
Right. And also, when we look at the articles that we have published, let's say 3 or 4 years of timeline, we go back and check our archive. One of the most successful industry that we covered is the streaming industry. Yeah. Netflix has always been a case study around many topics like organizational design to content creation, creators economy. So the streaming industry was the golden child, or still the golden child, but the fizz is a little bit running off, I guess. So we have been seeing different parts or different changes in the consumer behavior as well as the landscape for the competition. So how do you see the future for the streaming industry?
Ads, and more ads. And it's funny, you mentioned, normally at Deloitte, we don't try talking about individual clients, but it's such a perfect example. There is a company, I won't say who's a leader in the streaming business. The CEO of that company, I won't say who, said, "We will never have ads on our platform." This last quarter, they introduced ads, an ad hybrid model, and 1/4 of new signups in the US and Canada were in fact subscribing to that ad tier. Now, I have to be honest, this isn't me. I hate ads. I would never opt for a service that offered me ads in exchange for paying less money. But I'm not everybody. In surveys we did around the world, including in Turkey, 60 to 65% of consumers are actually really interested in saving a bit of money and having ads as part of the service. Now, Netflix is doing it, and Disney is doing it, and Amazon. Everybody's doing it. That's our prediction. 100% of major streaming services will offer an ad-supported tier if you want it. They won't force you, but if you want it. Now, why does this matter? Let's talk about advertising for a second. Let's pretend there's 200 million Americans watching a streaming service, which is true. Let's pretend they all watch 5 minutes of ads per hour and watch about an hour a day, which is true. That's 1 billion minutes of video ad inventory added in the United States all at once. How does that change the ecosystem? What's that going to do to pricing? If you had a choice as an advertiser of placing an ad on a social media network or perhaps a video channel with lower quality content, or positioning it on the next Game of Thrones or whatever, where would you want to put your ad? So there's going to be a lot of competition inside the video streaming ad market.
Great. So speaking of ads and social media, we eventually end up with talking about social shopping, because now the super apps are the reality of life. Social media is just the reality of life. People spend a lot of hours, especially here in Turkey. We see influencers becoming a really powerful source for marketing. So regarding this big picture, is the era for social shopping starting, or we still need some time to mature that?
I would say it's further than starting. I know that people in Turkey enjoy basketball. I'm from Toronto. We have the Raptors. We won the championship. When you think about basketball, we are not in the fourth quarter, but we're also not in the first in terms of social shopping. We are well into this game. Social shopping was about a $500 billion a year market in 2020. We believe it's a $1 trillion market this year. It has doubled in only 3 years. And it is all about influencers. As advertisers find that they can't use cookies, it's called the cookie apocalypse. As advertisers are having trouble targeting people using cookies, you need to shift. You need to adjust your business strategy. And that is through these influencers. But I got to make a point here. So you can see me. My kids use social shopping all the time. No surprise. But I'm 58 years old. My wife is 61. We use social shopping. Not as much as my kids, but we're still out there. So not only is social shopping a way of targeting 18 and 20-year-olds, it's also a way of reaching their parents.
Right. How can brands leverage this trend?
You got to be brand safe. You got to find the right influencers, and it's different and a lot of diversity. This is you can't just have blonde, blue-eyed people promoting whatever around the world. You need to be appropriate to market. You need to be diverse. You need to make sure you've got the right alignment, because it's not a one-size-fit-all approach. It's a lot of customization, a lot of caution, a lot of respecting the customer and making sure that you're working with the right influencers for the right product and the right social networks, because there's big differences between the different networks.
And also, I think brands should be very much aware of the differences between conventional marketing versus the social marketing, because as you have mentioned, the brand safety is something very important that should be taken into consideration when you are advertising to mobile platforms or social media platforms or gaming platforms. So we have seen some really bitter examples of this in the past. So I think this is an important thing to highlight. And our usual suspect, VR. In every year, we are talking about this is the year for VR, but it's not somehow the exact year for VR. So is 2023 the year for VR?
No. So my perfect example of this is IDC, one of the big forecasters, said that sales of VR goggles were going to rise 50% in 2022. They shrank 20. My point is, we're not just missing, the industry is actually declining, even though prices are rising. 2023 won't be it either. There's a problem with VR. It's the usage. We have devices like smartphones, which everybody has and everybody uses every day. Then we've got devices. I saw you were wearing a smartwatch. How many days a week do you wear your smartwatch?
Every day.
Every day. Only 20-25% of people have smartwatches, but they are highly engaged. That is a monetizable consumer technology platform. VR, we have studies from around the world. roughly 10% of people have VR goggles, and of those, roughly 10% use them daily, which means 1% of people use VR goggles daily. That's too low. Few people have them, few people use them on a daily basis. We need to change the form factor. You and I were talking in the green room. We need smaller, we need lighter, we need something that looks like glasses, not something that looks like a scuba mask.
Right. But in 2022, especially the beginning of the year, there was a huge hype about Metaverse, for instance. And also, Metaverse was also seen like a trend that will drive the usage of VR as well. So do you think it is going to be a helpful dynamic for VR?
So there's two parts to that question. Will the metaverse be a big thing? I think so. We, Deloitte, have published a number of reports on this, including one in Turkey, on the economic impact of the metaverse.
Huge potential.
Huge potential. $1 trillion. I don't know if it's that big. In 2030. Looks at watch. That's like 7 years from now. What's the economic impact in 2023? Not very big. A little bit on the enterprise. Digital twin, smart factory, training, simulation, but still small market. But your other question is more interesting to me. Do we need VR goggles for the metaverse? And I don't think we know the answer to that. There is this belief that there is a trend towards ever more immersive content. That's not true. The dominant form factor today is a little screen, 6 inches, and people love that. One of my favorite things to do is to read a book. If I can be immersed in a dead tree with ink on it, maybe we don't need heavy goggles, expensive goggles, goggles that exclude the outside world to participate in the metaverse. I would be expecting, you're a gamer, you love gaming, you can have so much fun without wearing goggles. Maybe we don't need the goggles.
Yeah, maybe. But as the goggles, as you have mentioned, the form factor becomes much more feasible and the content supports this. I think VR's value proposition will be much more realized. So, but we need time, at least a decade. I also agree with that. Last but not least, Duncan, we have been talking a lot about sustainability. In every industry, sustainability is the core of strategy. That is obvious. But when it comes to tech industry is both the solution and also the reason for the problem, because, you know, okay, you put the comma there, but tech industry has been doing a lot of projects, working a lot on a lot of things to push sustainability to the front line. But for the last couple of years, technology industry is also suffering from layoffs and low profits, and also facing a lot of criticism about the business models and data-driven strategies. And we have been talking a lot about decentralized world, which is planned to replace that. So it's not very pretty days for the tech industry, if I may. As we have talked in the green room, and you mentioned correctly that when things are good, sustainability is a nice topic to discuss. When things are a little bit problematic, then the list of the priorities can change. So what's your take about tech industry and sustainability?
So there's sort of like, you know, when times are good, sustainability is great. When times are bad, let's see, do I cut the dividend or start up a coal-fired plant? You know, that kind of conversation. What we are seeing is there's a famous study that said that right now tech produces 1 to 2 to 3% of the world's CO2 emissions. And if our trends in data use go on and the tech industry doesn't do anything about it, it could double or even triple, meaning that the climate impact of the tech industry, which isn't that bad now, could get a lot worse. Our prediction is that the industry knows that, and it is focused heavily on setting aggressive CO2 and renewable and sustainability targets. They are working on their supply chains. They are working on their energy sources, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. In our survey, the leading industry for targeting net zero was in fact technology, ahead of all other industries. We believe that this industry, even though times are tough, does understand that as part of a long-term business strategy, and especially as an industry that relies on talent, you cannot recruit, attract, retain the employees of tomorrow if you are seen as bad for the planet. Young people will not work for those companies anymore, and a critical part of talent acquisition and retention is going to be sustainability, but also DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tech industry is working on both of those, promoting more women, hiring more women, and sustainability at the same time.
Yes. Here is the bonus question, the bonus one after the credits, if I may. A couple of months ago, we have published an article by an HBS professor, Raj Chaudhary. The title of the article is that every company needs a space strategy. So space is becoming the new area for competition, and we have been seeing a lot of satellites that are taking their places in the orbit. So the low Earth orbit satellites are also becoming an interesting trend that you have mentioned in the trend list as well. So what's the dynamic behind that?
So we are focusing, we've got two predictions about space this year. It's a $500 billion a year industry growing at double digits. So it's huge, it's big, it's growing, and it's ever more important. Low Earth orbit data satellites, the real issue there is lots and lots of satellites, lots of constellations with the risk of hitting each other. On January 27th, two extremely, like see those concrete pillars behind us? Two pieces of debris the size of telephone poles flew by each other at 70 kilometers per second and missed each other by 6 meters. This, if they had happened, had it collided, would have released thousands of pieces of debris into orbit. Our prediction is we need to protect low Earth orbit. We need to think about debris. We need to be aware of it. We may even need to clean it up. Big conversation around keeping low Earth orbit safe for all of these literally tens of thousands of satellites providing service, high speed, low latency service over the entire planet.
Duncan, thank you very much for this pleasant conversation. Really appreciate your time and effort.
Teşekkür ederim. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.